This incident took place a couple of years ago, when I was still a young teenager, so my recollection of the events may not be entirely accurate. In the outskirts of my neighborhood, there was a peculiar street that forked into directions. One path was frequently used by people commuting to my school, while the other led to an intersection with a CVS store that served as a gateway to downtown San Antonio. Adjacent to the CVS, there stood a Korean school, which resembled a house with a school sign, but it also had a proper campus, likely accommodating a middle school. Although I was not a student there, I was aware of its presence. Across the street from the Korean school, an enigmatic house caught my attention. It seemed as though nobody ever entered or left, and it was surrounded by a dense, towering bamboo forest. My younger brother and I, being peculiar preteens, held a fascination for bamboo sticks. Inspired by their portrayal in movies and cartoons, we would often gather fallen bamboo sticks from the sidewalk. On one particular day, however, the pickings consisted only of broken fragments. Acting rather foolishly, we made a decision that would later prove unwise. We ventured into the narrow entrance that led between the bamboo forest and approached the house. As we approached the house, we noticed discarded trash scatter all around and to dilapidated vehicles that appeared to have been in a state of repair for quite some time. Tentatively, we knocked on the door and were met with the sound of barking. Just as we were about to give up and leave, an elderly and kindly-looking woman emerged from within. To our surprise, she seemed understanding and interested in our desire to find bamboo sticks for our imaginary fights. She agreed to our request, but warned us against venturing into the forest alone, mentioning the presence of bees or wasps and the ease with which one could get lost. Excusing herself briefly, the lady disappeared inside her house, returning shortly after with her shoes on. She graciously offered to give us a tour of her house, as it occupied a relatively large plot of oddly positioned land, surrounded by urban buildings. Leading us to the backyard, she pointed out an unusual contraption whose purpose eludes my memory. It appeared to be a makeshift creation, constructed from various parts, remnants of the previous owner's tinkering. She proceeded to share some background information about the inventor who once resided there and informed us about his son, who tragically took his own life in the bathtub of that very house. Further into the backyard, we stumbled upon an old shack that had seemingly served as storage long ago, now enveloped by tall, yellowing grass. At this point, a sense of unease washed over me, as if an ambush was imminent. However, no such event transpired. Eventually, the lady guided us toward the bamboo forest, past the broken-down vehicles. As expected, the forest was precisely as it had been described to us, a literal sea of bamboo. She informed us that every bamboo shoot was connected to a single origin, having sprouted from the first bamboo plant that had been planted. Whether her information was accurate, I cannot say, but I found her knowledge intriguing. According to her account, the previous owner, the inventor, had deliberately cultivated the forest. Within the bamboo forest, there was a peculiar trail that led straight into its heart. In the midst of the forest, we spotted a chair, a table, and a typewriter. Regrettably, we were unable to venture closer, as the lady cautioned us about the bees that had established their hive there. The typewriter was swarmed by a multitude of buzzing insects. She shared an anecdote about the inventor, who would frequently sit there and type away. I couldn't help but feel a tinge of discomfort as she recounted the story. Eventually, we retreated to a section of the forest near the front of the house. The lady assisted us in selecting two bamboo sticks and offered instructions on how to extract them from the ground. At this point, the situation took an even stranger turn. She recounted an unrelated incident where she claimed to have discovered a lifeless body near her property, close to some storage lockers adjacent to her house. However, her account was met with skepticism from others. The mention of this event sent chills down our spines, and we hastily attempted to make our exit. Before parting ways, the lady slipped us a note, expressing her desire for us to return and work for her. During the summer, there was an unsettling aura about her, though I couldn't quite pinpoint its source. It was a Sunday early in the morning. I live in the suburbs, but my parents own a farm that I enjoy going to because I get to see my dog, Lexi. She's a mutt, but she's not a tiny dog by any means. At that time, I felt very safe around her, and we would often take walks in a nearby forest. The day started off like any other. My dad and I got in the car, drove around for a while, and arrived at the farm. I immediately got out of the car and hugged Lexi, even though my parents would always get angry because I'd smell like her for the rest of the day. I put her leash on and asked my dad if I could take her for a walk. He thought we would just go down a road and back, but I always found it more interesting to take her to the forest. I always felt a certain kind of peace and relaxation there that was unmatched by anything else. So, we took a turn and headed to the forest. Usually, when we got there, I'd take off Lexi's leash so she could explore on her own. Most of the time, I'd carve my name into trees or look for anything interesting. On this particular day, I was playing baseball with some rocks and a wooden leg, presumably from an old table. Suddenly, I heard Lexi barking at something. This wasn't usual when we were in the forest. I thought it might be a fox or some other animal, so I quickly grabbed the wooden leg as a makeshift weapon. I called out to Lexi, but she kept barking, which was very strange since she always came to me when I called her. Curious and concerned, I followed the sound of her barks and stumbled upon a surreal scene that I will never forget. There was a man, probably in his late 50s, half naked, and carrying a large machete in one hand while holding moonshine in the other. This was the first time I had stumbled across someone in the woods, let alone someone half naked and carrying such a weapon. The man seemed completely oblivious to Lexi, and was hacking away at the ground for some reason. I didn't really know how to handle the situation. Even now, I have no idea how I would handle it. In confusion, I asked, "Sir, are you okay?" But I don't think I understood the seriousness of the situation at the time. He turned around, revealing his face, which had some of the clearest blue eyes I had ever seen. To this day, I can still vividly remember those eyes, wide open with a sense of intensity. He beckoned me closer, saying, "Come here, Bo. Look what I've dug up." I was afraid that if I didn't listen to him, he would start chasing after me, and that was something I wanted to avoid at all costs. I cautiously approached, but kept a good distance. When I arrived, all I saw was an empty hole. He returned to hitting the ground with his machete, occasionally taking sips from the bottle. Using this opportunity, I quickly went to get Lexi and started walking away slowly, trying not to alert him to my departure. But then, I took one final glance at the man, and what I saw made my heart race. He had a bone in his mouth, and I had no idea what animal it belonged to or if it even belonged to an animal at all. That was the tipping point for me. I had seen enough, and fear propelled me into a sprint with Lexi by my side. As we ran, I could hear him laughing, and then I saw something flying from the corner of my eye. It was his machete. I heard him yell, "Damn it!" This only fueled my adrenaline, and I ran faster. Fortunately, I knew the forest very well, so I wasn't afraid of getting lost. I tore through branches and bushes, until I finally escaped the forest. I didn't stop sprinting until I arrived at the garage, where my father was testing out lights on our tractor. I didn't tell him a single thing about the man, because I was afraid that he would get angry and wouldn't allow me to walk Lexi anymore. Needless to say, I never went to that forest alone ever again.